I, 16 girl, lost my mother at a very young age, and since then I've only lived with my dad. My mom passed suddenly when I was 6 months old because of many health difficulties that had been rendered worse because of the pregnancy. So she kind of lost her life trying to give birth to me. She had known all along that continuing with the pregnancy would prove to be quite risky for her health because she had a few of ailments to contend with, but she opted to pass through it, and unfortunately it did not end very well for her. I don't know much about it, but this is roughly what happened. And after my mother died away, I believe my dad, 40 male, sort of made it a mission to make sure that I received the finest of everything. I wouldn't say that I'm a spoiled kid, but my dad has never said no to me or anything when I asked him for something. Therefore, I know that he loves me a lot, and he is my universe. Therefore, I certainly adore him just the same. He would do anything for me, and I would do the same for him as well. Just getting this out of the way before people start judging me as a nasty daughter who is not willing to share her father was anyone. Anyway, my dad had definitely dated people after my mother passed away during the first couple of years when I was extremely tiny. He did not see anybody, but after I was old enough, about 5 or 6 years old, he started getting back to seeing other people. It was fair enough considering he and my mom had never even gotten married. They had just been dating for a couple of years, but even then he was pretty serious about her, and so was she. They were eventually supposed to get married, but it didn't work out. Anyway, I had barely known my mother, so I did not mind it when Dad brought other people home, and I don't think I would have minded it even if I had known my mother, because after we lost her, things had been pretty gloomy for him. If I'm going by what I have heard from my grandparents, so I'm happy that he tried to go on with his life, and I think even if things had been different, if my parents had broken up instead of my mother passing away, I still would have wanted him to go out and date other people. He has had a couple of girlfriends, and sometimes it has been serious. Occasionally, it's been nothing more than a fling, and we don't exactly sit and speak about it, but he keeps me updated just in case. If he truly gets along with somebody and intends to marry them, I should know about it. So he occasionally chats to me about it. I'm cool with him seeing people, and I always have been that way, but I think my dad's new girlfriend is just too ignorant to grasp that and has it in for me since she just assumed I'm not going to approve of their relationship. My father started dating Jacqueline, 30 female, 8 months ago, and she had been quite shy and quiet in the beginning. But after that, she just turned into a horrible nightmare, and I didn't even notice when that happened. It was probably about the time that she moved in with us 3 months back. It was meant to be for a short while since my dad only ever asked his girlfriend to move in with him once they had made it past the 1-year mark. So far it had only occurred once before, but finally him and his ex had to break up after 2 years of dating since she had been offered a new job in a distant nation and had decided to move. My father clearly could not relocate because we had our whole lives here, and so they ended up breaking up. This was the second time that he had asked one of his girlfriends to move in with him, but it was more out of a sense of obligation rather than because he genuinely wanted to. It had not been enough time for him to make such a significant decision, but the apartment that Jacqueline lived in previously had mold and was being treated for the same, so he had offered her to move in with him after she had complained to him about it at least twice a day for 2 solid weeks. So he had to pick up on that suggestion and ask her to move in with him. She said yes, and cheerfully moved in with all her belongings, which should have been our first red flag, because if she was simply moving in with us for a couple of days, she obviously did not need to bring every single thing that she owned with her. After about 2 weeks of residing with us, my dad asked her if her apartment was ready to be moved back into. She told him that she had quit the lease because she liked living with him, and she thought that it was about time that they made things official by living together. She told my dad that she really liked him, that she had dated a number of men previously, but had never met someone like him. My father liked her too. She was smart and successful and pretty lovely, but it had been 5 months of them being together, so he was kind of apprehensive about living together and permitted her to come in with us. But she kind of convinced him that it was the proper thing to do, and she brought up the fact that he was not getting any younger. She had mentioned things like how I also needed a maternal figure in my life, and she was willing to be that for me. So it would truly be for the best to move in together instead of wasting additional time. Because in her head, she had determined that she wanted to be with him, and she then issued him an ultimatum, saying that if he was not ready to move in, she would see it as an indication that he was not serious about this relationship. So my dad got strong-armed into letting her come in before he was ready, and that's how we ended up spending the last 3 months living together, even though I just could not stand her. In the first few months of them being together, my dad and Jacqueline would see each other every day, and she would come over virtually every other day after work, but would spend most of the time in his room and wouldn't bother me too much, so I did not have to interact with her much. And whatever interactions we did have together, it was quite civil and cordial, so I did not have a problem with her. But after she moved in, she was suddenly everywhere, and that was a bit jarring. When I say everywhere, I literally mean it. Just after 1 month of living together, it felt like she had taken over the entire house. She had started modifying things left and right without having to think about how it might affect us. At first, it was just little stuff like how our house was decorated. Eventually, it was like she had replaced everything to fit her own tastes. And all the house decor items that we did have initially had been moved into the attic because it did not fit her. She did this without consulting anybody. She didn't even know that these were the things that my father and I had individually bought, and they were dear to us. But I did not say anything about it because she was a visitor and I wanted her to feel comfortable. Also, I did not view it as important enough to pick a battle about. But then she started moving on, wanting to change greater things. After we had been living together for approximately 1 month, she decided that she would take over the cooking, and we were fine with that as well. But then she started controlling our dietary choices as well. The difficulty was that Jacqueline was totally plant-based and expected us to adapt to her lifestyle, maintaining that it was safe and healthy. She considered that our food habits had been dangerous earlier, and now that she was here, she could no longer allow it to go on with good conscience. So she would cook every day for us. And that was sort of difficult because once in a while, I wanted to have stuff that I liked as well. But she had already cooked dinners for us, and I did not want to let that food go to waste. So my father and I would simply have to shut up and eat what she made, since we did not want her efforts and the food to get wasted, and because she always claimed that she was doing it to make us healthy and was only looking out for us. It was much more difficult to disagree with her. I had been courteous to her and did not object against any of it, even though I was really battling to make my peace with the reality that this woman would be living with us all. Because my father had always asked that I be courteous to her. I could tell that he really liked her in spite of all her quirky peculiarities, so I tried my best to be kind and put up with her. But then she started taking things too far and started trying to dominate me as well. And that's where I drew the line, because nobody gets to order me around in my own house. Not even my dad does that. And it was bizarre things too. I really prefer drinking iced coffee. But then one day she just told me that I was damaging my health with all that sugar and caffeine and told me that was banned for everybody in that household from now forth. I did not like that. I tried to fight with her, but she informed me that she was only looking out for my health, and I could continue to drink iced coffee if I wanted, but it was just going to disappoint her since she knew that it was going to harm my health. Now, it's not like I drink iced coffee every hour. It's just a couple of days in the week, and I don't think that that would do anybody any harm. I still get iced coffee. I simply had to sneak it in, which was fairly unpleasant since it's my house and I don't think I have to feed the urge to smuggle anything in, but I just did not want another sermon from her about how this was bad for my health. So that's why I had to make sure that she did not see me enjoying iced coffee, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, no pun intended. A couple of weeks ago, she noticed me strolling around the house with my hair in a pony, which is something that I always do. I always have my hair in a pony, and I only undo it when I'm in my room, and I don't have to go any place or before going to bed because I find it to be convenient so that my hair doesn't continuously falling into my face, and virtually nobody has ever had a problem with it. But then she started making comments about how it was not good for my hairline, and I should let my hair down as well. I would have appreciated it if she hadn't already gotten on my nerves, but that just rubbed me the wrong way, and we ended up kind of getting into a fight because I told her that I found this practical, and she did not need to try and control every aspect of my life because it was getting really annoying. She felt insulted, so she complained to my dad about it. My father had just come in from work, and he works longer hours than she does, so he was fatigued from that already, and he just sat me down and told me not to say anything to her because he wanted to be kind. I tried to fight with him, but I did not have the will to keep on because he just seemed tired. So I let it go, and I decided that I was simply going to speak to her and give her the satisfaction, since clearly she had it in for me and was truly trying to get on my nerves. But that's easier said than done because she just kept trying to order me about and would always have something to say whenever the two of us were home alone. She is a high school teacher, but in a different school, so she and I generally get back home about the same time, and then we have to spend the rest of the day together until the evening when my dad comes back home. I generally try to steer clear of her and just stay in my room, but every time that I would come downstairs to get anything for myself, she would always have some ridiculous remark to make, and I mostly tried to ignore it for the past couple of months, but it was just getting really hard. Sometimes it would be about my appearance, or about what I ate, or about what I was wearing, and it was just extremely frustrating sometimes. I did respond to her, and every time it would result in a fight, and then she would complain to my dad about it. So largely for his sake, I attempted to keep my mouth shut because I knew that he wouldn't break up with her in spite of all of this. He truly seemed to like her, and I did not know what he saw in her, but I knew that he liked her a lot, and every time that she complained to him, she would always make it sound like I was the one who was trying to go out of my way and create drama. She kept insinuating that the only reason that we did not get along was because apparently I was the one who still wasn't over the fact that my dad was dating somebody new, and it seems to be getting serious, which is just all BS. I made it very clear in the first paragraph of my post that I am cool with my father dating other people. I just wasn't cool with Jacqueline because she was the one who had started drama with me and was constantly trying to get on my nerves, but every time I would argue with her and hit back, she would play the victim and act like I was picking on her and being rude to her for no reason, and she was the one who always had my best interests at heart. It was really annoying, and I knew it was taking a toll on my father as well, because he was torn between the two of us. However, about 3 days ago, things went south in a really bad way, and since then everyone's been really mad at me. So I invited a couple of friends over, and usually when I have my friends over, we just stay in my room and ignore Jacqueline's existence, because they know that I don't have a good relationship with her because I went to them all the time about her. Anyway, this time we were all sitting in the living room and watching a movie because we did not want to watch it on my laptop and wanted to watch it on the biggest screen in the house, which was our television. It's a free country and it's my house, so I can do whatever I want to. And so my friends and I took over the living room. We did not ask Jacqueline to leave, but when Jacqueline realized we would be sitting in the living room, she went back to her bedroom by her own choice, and I thought that there would be no trouble now that she had gone inside her own room. But right in the middle of the movie, she decided to come back out and try to boss me around. She interrupted us while we were in the middle of the movie and told me that she wanted me to fold my clothes and take them up to my room, since she did not want the laundry to just be sitting there, and I tried to tell her that I would do it later since I was literally in the middle of watching a movie right now, so it was pretty reasonable. Anyway, on most days I just take clean clothes, go to my room, and then fold them and put them in my cupboard. I have always done my own laundry ever since I was old enough, and it was really annoying that she was acting like she was the one who always did it for me. Nobody had to tell me to do it, and I did not understand why she was trying to show off her forehead and control over me in front of my friends at the time, but she refused to budge and told me that I couldn't continue watching the movie until I did whatever was asked because it was my duty and I couldn't wiggle my way out of it just because my friends had come over. That really pissed me off because she knew it quite well that I always do my own chores, and yet she was acting like I don't do anything. I knew that this was her way of trying to humiliate me in front of my friends, and she was just trying to boss me around because she knew that she could get away with it. It was too much for me to handle. I finally snapped and I went off on a rant against her right in front of my friends and decided to show her her place. I told her that first things first. This was my house. It belonged to my dad and not to her, so she had literally no right to come here and try to boss me around. And more importantly, she was not even really welcome here. She had manipulated my father into allowing her to stay here, so she should just be grateful that she even has a roof over her head right now. Because if it had been up to me, she would never have been living here in the first place. And then I told her that I also knew what she was trying to do. She was trying to put me down and get me under her control, so that it would be easier for her to control my father as well. But unfortunately, I was going to make sure that it never happened. I never had any issues with any of my girlfriends because they were not such blatant liars and manipulators. But she was different. She wanted to have my dad wrapped around her little finger. For that, she had to make sure that she had me under her farm as well, and I could see it pretty clearly, so it was not going to work on me. She could try her best to humiliate me and boss me around, but I was always going to keep standing up for myself. I told her I knew that she was after my dad because he was successful, and she wanted that for herself, but it would probably not last long enough because even though my dad disliked her, that was not enough to sustain a relationship, and he also had to be able to tolerate her at the rate that she was going. It did not seem likely that he'd be able to make it work for much longer, as she was literally one of the worst individuals I have ever come across in my whole life, because anybody who tries to play mind games with a 16-year-old does not deserve to have any form of peace in their lives after that. I told her that so far I have not been attempting to split her and my father apart, but for now, since she had been insinuating it and trying to turn my dad against me for so long, I was finally going to give in and do exactly what she was accusing me of, so she had better watch her back. After yelling all of that to her face, my friends and I left the room and we walked back into my own room after discussing it for a while, and once I had calmed down, they decided to go as well. Jacqueline did not talk to me after that, and there was complete silence in the house until my dad arrived back home in the evening. A couple of minutes after he came back, he came up straight to my room. Usually when he comes back home from work, I go down to greet him and we converse. But this time I did not go down since I knew that he would come up first. Jacqueline was done complaining to him about what I had said, and sure enough, that's what had happened. I heard his car pull up in the driveway and he entered the home, and within 15 minutes, he was in my room asking me why Jacqueline was weeping so hard and accusing me of hating her and attempting to split them up. He was incredibly cunning on her part, since while I was alone in the house, I hadn't been able to hear a single thing, but as soon as my dad got back home, she started sobbing and crying as if the worst had happened. I knew it was all an act, and I informed my dad the same. I told him the truth, and I also added that I understood that he genuinely liked her, but I couldn't put up with this kind of conduct anymore. I informed him that she had continuously been attempting to pick on me, and this time she had over the line by trying to boss me about and humiliate me in front of my friends. She was not my mother. She had no right to speak to me and act the way that she did. And I think had my mother been around, she would surely not try to treat me like this. She was only trying to show everyone how much authority she had in this household and was trying to secure her place as a member of the family, which was not something she had earned. She was trying to force her way into our family, and it was evident. So I told Father that I could not be quiet anymore, and I knew that he had always urged that I ought to be nice to her. But she had gone things way too far, and I couldn't stand this. And that's why I had finally stood up to her. And if he had come to my room to beg me to apologize, he could forget about it, because I was not going to say anything to that woman. And if he wanted to continue to date her, I would be happy with that. But I did not accept her, and I was just going to pretend that she did not exist anymore. My father did not say anything. He just exited the room. And it's been 3 days since, and I don't know what's going on. Jacqueline left the house the very next day without an explanation, and when I tried to ask my dad what happened, he told me that he simply wanted some space and he would talk to me later. My dad and I have had fights before, but this time he simply appeared genuinely unhappy and upset, and I felt like he was mad at me for whatever had happened. I don't know if he and Jacqueline have broken up or not, but she has departed. She did not pack other things and depart, so I don't know whether she will be back. I just don't have any notion about what's going to happen right now. Anyway, I spoke to my grandparents about this as well, and they think that it is vital for me to stand up for myself, and they have maintained that ever when I first started experiencing problems with Jacqueline. But they mentioned that the things that were spoken to her were not right, and it was simply incredibly insulting. I feel awful about everything that has transpired since right now it feels like everybody needs some space away from me. And most of all, I despise the idea that my father is acting this way since for the past 3 days, ever since Jacqueline left, we have only spoken to each other the bare minimum. And it's been weird. I don't know. I remain for being nasty to my dad's girlfriend because she had been attempting to order me about and embarrass me in front of my friends. First update. Hello? So it's been 5 days after Jacqueline left, and today, after reading most of the comments here, I decided to finally speak to my father. I know most of you guys think that he's a bad father and he screwed up and whatnot, but trust me, that's not the case. This is just a small fraction. It does not define him, and he has always been the best father to me, so I would say that this is going to ruin our relationship. But anyway, I finally spoke to him and I told him that I wanted to sort things out and clear the air between the two of us because he was my best friend and I did not like what was going on, and we were finally able to talk to each other today. And he told me that the reason he needed space was because he had finally dumped Jacqueline. That night itself, he had made up his mind that he was going to break up with her because she was miserable and could not afford that. And the real reason he had asked for some space was that he couldn't even bring himself to confront what he had done, since he believed that he had been selfish and thought that maybe I was going to have a different opinion of him now. So I assured him that I did not think of him as any less of a good father, just because he had been kind of selfish this one time, because he had found a woman that he really liked so much after so long. Every parent screws up occasionally, I guess. Every human being screws up, and the most that we can do is just feel sorry about it and then try to move on from that. He also apologized for not being transparent with me and talking to me these past few days. He said he just felt very lost and didn't know what to do, and he did not want me to feel response for any of this. So he had just kept it all to himself. And then the process. He might have screwed things up for us even more, but I told him that everything was all right. These were uncharted waters for both of us, and we did not know how to sail them. I'm simply grateful that we have been able to discuss things out with each other, so we were able to clear the air. And it's all good now. Update to 6 days since Jacqueline, and still no news from her. My father told me that he hadn't tried to reach out to her either, as he knew it would be rather awkward, especially after he urged her to go after the major argument that we had. I'm just hoping she comes back soon and collects her things, since we don't want to drag this out, because that will just lead to more trouble. And I've already been feeling very apprehensive. The sooner she comes back, packs all her stuff and departs, the faster we can wrap up everything and try to move on. Truth be told, I honestly really couldn't wait for her to take all her stuff with us so we can bring the things that she had put into the attic back out again, and our home can go back to looking like our home. Update 3. It's been a week since Jacqueline departed today. She stopped by to collect her belongings. She had arrived with a friend and she seemed terribly heartbroken, but whatever occurred was kind of her fault. So I didn't really feel bad for her. I assume she didn't really think things through and believed that my dad was one of those fathers who might have picked her over his daughter. Unfortunately, my dad's not like that, so she severely misread the issue. Anyway, it was the weekend, so both my father and I were at home, and it was rather difficult to watch her pack the last of her stuff. But in an hour, it was over. She then said one final goodbye to my father. They hugged it out, and it was very embarrassing to witness. Anyway, she did not even glance at me for the entire time that she was here. And I, for one, am grateful, since I don't even know how I would have reacted to her engaging with me. Anyway, it's all over now, and we can all finally move on with our lives.